Burnett. Out front tonight, Senator Rand Paul declares victory after a filibuster that lasted 12 hours, 52 minutes, and 11 seconds, because who's counting? The man who staged the Rand page finally got the answer he wanted from the White House.
Does the president have the authority to use a weaponized drone to kill an American not engaged in combat on American soil? The answer is no.
And in return, the White House got what it wanted, too. John Brennan was confirmed today as CIA director in a 63-34 vote in the Senate. It was Brennan's nomination, of course, that Paul was holding up with his close to epic filibuster. But not everyone in Senator Paul's own party is celebrating his win.
All I can say is that I don't think that what happened yesterday is helpful to the American people.
Tonight, Senator Rand Paul is somehow still standing, and I spoke with him just moments ago, and I asked him whether it was worth it, 12 hours, 52 minutes, and 11 seconds, for what is essentially a two-letter response, N-O.
Absolutely. I think, the idea that the Constitution applies to all American citizens and that the military will not be using military strikes against American citizens, I think such an important principle that I could have gone 8 more minutes and gone to 13 hours maybe. But no, I think the response was important. You don't always get a response from the White House when you make an argument, but we've been asking for 6 weeks for this response. The fact that we got it, I feel like it's a victory for us.
All right, I know you feel that way, but of course, you're no stranger to this, but there's been some harsh criticism, and this time, though, from some pretty big names in your own party. Here's what some of your Senate colleagues on the Republican side had to say about your big day yesterday.
Somehow, to allege that the United States of America, our government, would drop a drone Hellfire missile on Jane Fonda, that brings the conversation from a serious discussion about U.S. policy to the realm of the ridiculous.
To my Republican colleagues, I don't remember any of you coming down here suggesting that President Bush was going to kill anybody with a drone.
So Senators McCain and Graham and Senator Paul. Then the Wall Street Journal editorial board this morning, they took you in their sights, saying, calm down, Senator. Mr. Holder is right, even if he doesn't explain the law very well. The U.S. government cannot randomly target American citizens on U.S. soil or anywhere else. If Mr. Paul wants to be taken seriously, he needs to do more than pull political stunts that fire up impressionable libertarian kids in their college dorms. He needs to know what he's talking about.
Well, here's the response here, and that editorial goes on to say that they can't target Americans unless we designate them as enemy combatants, which begs the question, who gets to make the judgment who's an enemy combatant and who's not? Who gets to make the judgment, oh, he's associated with terrorists? If you write an email to your cousin in Lebanon and they might be a terrorist or they might have friends who are terrorists, somehow you are without getting a trial by jury. These are the same two senators that argued in favor of indefinite detention, which means, and I asked Senator McCain this directly, I said, does this mean you could take an American citizen without a trial and send them to Guantanamo Bay for the rest of their life without ever charging them? And he said, yes, if they're a safety risk. Who gets to decide? Senator McCain? Does he get to decide if you're an enemy combatant? I'm alarmed by anybody, any adult or any senator who would say that they get to judge your guilt and charge without a charge, send you to indefinite detention. These are the same people who are also arguing that the laws of war apply to America because America's the battlefield. In the law of war, the conclusion to that is that you don't get due process. So what they're arguing for is alarming. Every American should be alarmed and worried about the philosophy behind their arguments.
And I understand what you're saying. I get the logic of that. But, you know, you've said in the past you would have convicted al-Awlaki of treason, obviously, who was killed by a drone in Yemen. And you said you wouldn't have had trouble with a drone strike against him. But I wonder, from your point of view, how can you be all right, though, with al-Awlaki being killed in Yemen if you wouldn't be all right with him being killed by a drone here, if he's an enemy combatant in both cases plotting against the United States of America?
What it has to do in America is, I think, that we have a doctrine of lethal force if you're using lethal force. So if a person named Milwaukee has a grenade launcher on their shoulder, they can be wiped out with lethal force by the police, by the FBI. If you're robbing a liquor store and you have a gun,
so
you
your
can be
issue is
wiped
the
out by
drone. You don't
lethal
mind
force.
killing him. It's the drone?
No, it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with that you can use lethal force when someone is committing lethal force. But what we're doing with our targeted drone attacks is we're often killing people that are not actively involved in any kind of battlefield. So if we transmit that standard to America, you would have people sitting in cafes, in their home at night. We don't do that in America. In America, you're accused of a crime, you would be arrested, and you would get a trial by a jury of your peers.
I still don't understand in the Awaliki case because, you know, they said they had proof that he had plotted against the United States. But to your point, at that moment, he wasn't holding a grenade launcher pointing it at an American citizen when he was killed, but yet it was okay to do it. So there is, it appears, a gray area in your mind.
Well, no, I think you missed my point. On Awaliki, my opinion has been that it would have been better to have tried him for treason and that he could have been executed because you can have a death penalty for a treason case. For people who are engaged in a battlefield overseas that are holding grenade launchers or firing weapons, there is no due process. My point is that Senators McCain and Graham say that they want the laws of war to come home to America, that America is a battlefield and that the laws of war come home. But the laws of war don't involve due process and can't, and I don't think they should. So I don't want the law of war to be the law of America, because that would mean that we'd be giving up on the Bill of Rights.
Now, I must say, on a slightly lighter note, you did get some support, and you actually got some support from the Democratic side. Democratic Senator Ron Wyden spoke up and defended you, Senator Paul. Even Majority Leader Harry Reid had some praise for you, and here is that.
I've been involved in a few filibusters, as Rand Paul has, as Rand Paul did yesterday. And what I've learned from my experiences with talking filibusters is this: to succeed, you need strong convictions, but also a strong bladder. It's obvious. Senator Paul has both.
I have to say I was incredibly impressed by your bladder control, and I was only all right with it because you are a doctor, and I figured you knew if you were taking a risk you shouldn't be taking.
Yeah, no, one of the things that really, there were two things that struck me about yesterday, three things. One, the public response was overwhelming, bigger than we've ever seen. The second thing that struck me is members of the House of Representatives came over spontaneously and began to support this. Members of the Senate came over. But really the biggest compliment for someone in high office up here is when people from across the aisle that don't see eye to eye with you often come and compliment you. 4 or 5 senators came by at the end today and said that they were very appreciative of my stance. And many of them actually said they agreed with me standing up to defend, you know, the right of people to have the right to trial by jury. And this was an important battle, despite what some might want to make it. This was a big, huge victory for those who believe in the Bill of Rights.
All right, thanks, Senator Rand Paul. And out front next, Kim Jong-un plans